Hello, everybody. Welcome to another stream with us, the Columbus Cartoon Coalition. I am Kelci D. Crawford, creator of The Legend of Jamie Roberts. I am joined today by...
I'm Ben Wright-Heuman, cartoonist extraordinaire, creator of Cost Pain, and one of the co-founders of Canon Wright Productions.
I know you have this set up, so I'll buy the bait. What are you holding there, Ben?
Well, we're talking about how to promote your comics in person, so I decided to show off my favorite way to promote comics in person, in part because I also know it kind of annoys Kelci.
Yeah. Anytime that Ben and I share a table together, he always whips out this sign at some point during a show. Sometimes multiple times during a show.
So one thing I do want to point out, Kelci, because you've seen the sign multiple times, I officially have a permanent sign, and I burned the top of it.
Huzzah! Oh my gosh. Yeah, previously you would just like draw on a sketchbook page and just hold up the book.
Yep.
To show it off. So I'm glad that you finally have an official sign. That is great.
I still have the sketchbook page, but it's now just the sale. Also, this is way easier to hold. I should have done this a long time ago.
I'm a little surprised that you hadn't. Yeah. Okay, so yes, today we are talking about how to promote your comics in person. Now, we briefly touched on like holding up signage at a convention, but conventions are just one in-person event that you can do to promote your comics. And I was hoping we could touch on a few other ways that we could promote comics in person rather than in an online sphere. We already did an entire separate stream talking about how to promote your comics online, and you can watch that through our YouTube channel, link down the doobly-doo. So I wanted to briefly mention some of the other ways of promoting in person before we just jump into conventions. If that works for you, that works for me.
Sounds great to me.
Cool. So I'm going to mention right off the top one really good way that you can promote your comics in person. And I feel like this isn't really mentioned a whole lot, is running workshops on how to make comics. Mm-hmm. So that was how I was promoting heavily when I was living in the Wheeling, West Virginia area, and word got around enough that I started teaching webcomic or comic making workshops for different Girl Scout troops in Ohio and West Virginia. And doing that helped me like low-key kind of tell the attendees, by the way, I also make comics. And sometimes I would bring like an entire box of my mini comics with me so that they could like trade mini comics with me and get the word out that way as well. So I do recommend workshops as a way to help promote the word about your comics and get the word out that, hey, you have stuff that folks can read. And that can look a few different ways. It doesn't have to be teaching Girl Scouts how to make comics, though I highly recommend it because it turns out the Girl Scouts have a badge all for making comics.
Wait, what?
Yes, they do. Girl Scouts has a badge. They have a comics maker badge.
That is
right.
That's the best thing I've ever heard.
It was clearly after I was in Girl Scouts, because if I were in Girl Scouts, you bet your sweet bippy I would be going for that badge. Yeah, it is a thing. It's a real thing. So besides working with the Girl Scouts, though, you can absolutely do like a comic making workshop for Free Comic Book Day. And then that way folks can get free comics. You could also do it for other special occasions, like maybe Banned Book Week with a indie bookstore. That's also a possibility. You could also, in terms of like promoting your comics, because I've done this before, reaching out to other bookstores, particularly the independent bookstores, and seeing if they would be willing to host you for a special event. Like, oh, I released a new book, or, oh, it's Free Comic Book Day, or other special events. Sometimes indie bookstores will also be happy to have you for, like, if there's a local festival in the area and they want to have an artist present in their store during the festival to entice people to like walk in and check out their stuff. That is also a possibility. It's something that I've done as well, particularly for like smaller towns throughout Ohio. So I highly recommend that tactic as well. Ben, what are your thoughts?
Well, my first thought, and I have to share this. This is what the Girl Scouts merit badge for comics looks like. That's fantastic.
I love it. I love how it's a diamond as well.
That I hadn't even picked up on, but that is a funny reference. I will also say, Boy Scouts don't have such a merit badge. Boo.
Yeah, unfortunate.
Yeah. But yeah, doing appearances like that, I'll be honest, I mostly do cons. So I think from my perspective, the biggest thing I have are questions such as, how do you set up an independent workshop? Like, what is involved with that?
So it depends on the venue and where it is that you want to book it. So I've hosted some workshops with like the YWCA of Wheeling, because the YWCA of Wheeling has a cultural diversity initiative. And a lot of that also means bringing in a comic artist to help the youngsters tell their own stories. So a lot of it can look like reaching out to volunteer organizations to be like, hey, I see that you have youth programming. Would it be okay if I offered to do like a how to make a free mini comic workshop with y'all and get the word out that way? It can also look like reaching out to your local library. There was actually a different comic artist in my town that reached out to my branch library and offered to run a how to make comics workshop to promote his own stuff. Scott McMahon, I believe his name was. So, you know, you can also reach out to your public library to do that. When I first started, I actually reached out to New Dimension Comics, which was or is, because they're still around. They're a comic shop that has multiple branches around the Pittsburgh area, but they also have expanded into the eastern side of Ohio. So I had reached out to them for like, they have a special event called Free Graphic Novel Day, where they just hand out free graphic novels. So I reached out to them and I was like, hey, would it be cool if I ran a how to make mini comics workshop on Free Graphic Novel Day? We could set up the, like, because they usually have like gaming tables in the back corner. And it's like, hey, how about we take over some of the gaming tables? Because I saw there's no tournaments happening this day. How about I set up and we do a how to make a free mini comic workshop at these tables? And that will bring people into your shop. And it would help promote, hey, making comics, but also promote my own comics. So it's a lot of reaching out to folks who have like a workshop space, whether that's a library. Libraries are usually really good for having like workshop spaces, but it could also look like reaching out to a local comic shop that has like a gaming table space. It could also look like even not necessarily just running mini comic workshops. Because I have given talks at indie bookstores before that were just talking about specific niches that I work in. So like for you, Ben, I know that you work on mystery comics. So you could have like a workshop about how to write mystery stories. I don't know why my phone just vibrated, but we're just going to ignore that.
I have actually done that.
Yeah.
I did that as a panel actually at a number of cons. I called it Who Drawn It? But and doing it at cons, I definitely understand because there's a panel organizer. You reach out to them, pitch your panel. If they approve it, they put you somewhere on the schedule. All that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
I do wonder when you do something with a library or another workshop organization or things like that, are they handling your promotion? Are they trying to get butts and seats, or is that completely on you?
A mix. It really depends on who you're working with. Because like there are some folks who have like for me, it's, hey, does this person have a stronger Facebook presence? Because I'm not on Facebook. So if they can reach out to that Facebook market where I can't reach, then that works for me. Because sometimes other organizations will have like access to particular platforms that you don't. So, it's worth looking at the organizations that you want to work with and seeing where they've put their promotional eggs in what baskets. So like working with my local branch, I don't know if they're necessarily on social media a whole lot, but they do. This indicates something about how small my town is right now, but they have a local newspaper that they like to post like local events in. So anytime that the Rossford Library, or outing myself here, it's a suburb of Toledo, whatever. But like the Toledo Library and the Rossford Library both have light up signs and regular placements in the local newspaper. But their outdoor signs will also advertise like if there's a workshop happening, if there's like free books, because I know the Toledo Library partners with the Dolly Parton program to give free books to children in the summers, which is pretty cool. So like, working with libraries, sometimes libraries will have like a flashing outdoor sign. So that's something to keep in mind. When I was doing stuff with New Dimension Comics, they would post on their Facebook page and their other social media platforms and do it that way. And sometimes it's just a matter of shouting it out on a newsletter to be like, hey, I'm doing this thing at this time, at this place. You can't also, circling back to it, run a panel at a convention. So like, this is also a really good alternative for like, if you applied for a convention to have a table at a convention and they're like, nah, we don't have space for you at a table, but you pitch a panel to them, odds are pretty high they can accept you as a panelist. I actually had this happen a couple of years ago when I applied for Anna Marathon. They said, no, we don't have space for a table for you, but we would like you to do this panel that you pitched for us. Unfortunately, I had to turn it down because I got accepted to a different show that was happening that same weekend. So I ended up going to that instead. But, that option is there for folks. Pitching a panel is a good idea. And then that way you're hosting a talk and you're talking about the thing that you're passionate about. And then at the end, you're like, by the way, I make comics. Check out my comics.
Yeah.
They're great.
Yeah. Like I actually have kind of gotten off the panel game, but I really should get back into it. We talked about doing workshops of how to make this stuff, things like that. If you're anywhere in the comic sphere, you'll find something you can talk about. Like I've also done live draws, which because my stuff's digital, it's generally like I figured out a way to work with most setups. It's often a little complicated. Show up early and figure it out. Yeah. But like that's one of the lowest pressure types of things that I do as a panelist, because very often, even if it's low attendance or anything like that, I'm getting work done.
Yeah. There you go.
And on top of that, a lot of times they also will film their panels. And if that happens, you may be able to get additional media from that, which will definitely get the word out. Yeah.
It depends on the show, because some shows do record their panels, some shows don't. But it's always worth asking if they do recordings and where those recordings will be posted. That way you can, extend your reach that way as well. And also give them shout outs to be like, hey, my panel made it on this platform that you should check out. It's another way to spread the word.
Yeah. Another thing you can do with con panels in particular, very often they will actually have multiple panelists for certain. They'll have some Q&A type things where they need guests basically to come in and talk about their stuff. If you get in on that, it's a lot lower pressure if you're at all nervous about that kind of thing.
Yeah. I actually applied to be a panelist for one of the panels that's happening at Genghis Khan this year. We'll see if I get in or not, because they only have like 5 panels happening that I saw that they were asking for contributors to. So,
yeah. I'll tell you, the very first panel I ever did, there was this absolutely tiny convention I went to.
Okay.
I'm not exaggerating any of this. I found out about the convention the night before the convention.
Wow.
And I was actually on a kick going through, like, complaining about how awful some convention websites were, and I found one that really frustrated me because it was in the area and I'd never heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly just shot him an email saying, hey, I know it's too late this year, but is there any way to get on a newsletter to find out for next year? And they responded, it's not too late. How many tables do you want?
Wow.
This is while I was at the Center for Cartoon Studies, so I just talked to people. I was like, who wants a table tomorrow? Like, we got like 3 tables for $50 total.
Dang!
That's a good deal. Here's what it turned out. Like, I'm not naming the con. Honestly, it was a very fun show. I did it the next year too. But no joke, a high school senior put this together, and it was in his in the gymnasium of their high school.
You know, that's
put
ballsy.
It together in a few months.
Dang.
And it was better run than a number of cons I've done.
Dang.
Yeah,
there are just some teenagers that are like industrious. I don't know if you saw there's a YouTube channel called Study Hall, and they just did an interview recently with Brendan Lee Mulligan, and he talked about some of the precocious things that he did when he was a teenager. Sometimes all it takes is a well-organized teenager who has a lot of time on their hands to put something together.
But yeah, getting to the panel from this particular con, there was one panel, and they basically invited everyone who was tabling, if they wanted to, could come and join the panel. Mm-hmm. And like, this kid did a great job putting this all together. He was definitely winging it. Like, he knew what happened at cons, but he didn't necessarily know how they were normally organized and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
And we get there, and there's about maybe a dozen of us sitting up at this podium. Like, and an audience has come in, and a minute passes past the time, and we all look at each other and realize there's no moderator.
Oh no.
And we're all like, oh, are we just supposed to wing it? And a moment later, a frazzled teacher comes running in and goes, sorry, they just told me I'm doing this.
Wow.
But it was literally just talking to a group of cartoonists, like just the tablers, and being like, so what do you guys do and how does it work? And it turned out great. And there were a lot of people there. This is before I was live streaming, so myself included, who'd basically never done this kind of thing before. Mm-hmm. And it was a really easy, low-key way to do it. And worst case scenario, you hide in the group.
I mean, yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that. I just remembered there was a convention that I went to in Kentucky. Not going to name specific names. I'm not sure that they're around as a show or still around, because this was pre-pandemic. I went there, and they were looking for a ton of panelists for a ton of different things. So I ended up on like 2 or 3 different panels at that show. One was about LGBT representation in your stories, and the other was how to make a newsletter and how to run it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be comics specific if you wanted to pitch a panel. I mean, obviously, if you love comics, pitch something to do with comics. But sometimes it can just be as simple as, hey, I think I write a decent newsletter and I have a lot of thoughts about how to do one. And that's how I ended up on that panel. So there's that too. It's funny because you mentioned other panels talking about comics or comics adjacent things. And it reminded me of Brian, I can't remember his last name. He pops up at Space.
Brian Kennedy?
I believe that's it. Yeah. He's
one of the people behind the Scribbler.
Yes, him. Yeah, him. Yeah. He did a panel about like, it was something like productivity with comics and how it is that he's able to like publish as many comics as he does while working a full-time job, while having a family. And it was basically a walkthrough of how to use a Trello board, which I'm like, perfect. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So, I'm not complaining. I also use Trello to track my projects. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that real quick before I forgot. As far as promoting your comics in person, like workshops are one way, panels are another way. Selling your work at conventions. Let's just go ahead and talk about that for a little bit, because we've been kind of dancing around it for a minute. So like, yes, Yes. How about we talk about your fire sale? How did you come up with that idea?
So the fire sale, that popped up, OhioCon 2022 is when I first did it. And the reason was, the fire alarm went off while we were in the artist alley. And the funny thing is, that's not the first time that's happened to me at all. Like that's just something that happens because some jerk will pull the fire alarm and think it's funny.
Yeah, I
and
get that.
With the exception of one show I ever did, they never evacuated us. They're just like, it was some jerk pulling the fire alarm. Don't go anywhere unless staff says so.
Okay.
Yeah. But I decided as a joke to make a fire sale sign.
Okay.
And it worked, which is the thing that was funny. I love the fire sale sign because it gets people's... So one of the things that was said to me a really long time ago, this would have been at... I shouldn't name the con because the con was terrible.
It's not Put and Play, is it?
No. This was before then.
Yeah, okay.
Put and Play is legendary. But
yes.
No, this was one where like it was a pop culture con, and this was one of my first pop culture cons, so I didn't expect it to be this rough.
Okay.
I was tabling with a couple other people. It was a 2-day show, and they didn't come back the second day. Only I did. Because it was that bad.
Wow.
I remember walking around talking to every cartoonist there. Nobody was making money. A few were completely freaked out because of how expensive everything was. We've all been there. The thing is, not that far from me, there was one table, and they were actually doing really well. They were the only people I saw that were doing great. And the reason was there was this guy, I will name him because he was awesome, Josh Dahl. He's a writer out of New England. And he had his artist sitting there drawing. In the meanwhile, he's in front of the table doing hard selling, like full-on sales pitch. And like walking up, I still remember he was walking up to people. It's like, hey, you like superheroes? You like revenge? You'll like this comic. Like,
yeah.
He didn't actually have my like Carnival Barker voice, but that was the feel. But he'd actually be taking the comic and like, let me show you my favorite part, and like putting it in their hands and like getting people looking at it, and they were doing great. I actually was talking to him, was like, you're basically spoiling your comic. You're showing them everything in there, and they're still buying it. How is this working? And he said to me, the reason is they're not paying for the comic. They're paying for a Comic-Con experience.
Yeah.
That's what I'm giving them. The comic is a bonus.
Yep.
And to me, that's what the fire sale sign is. My favorite thing about the fire sale sign is how often people smile when they see it.
Yeah. And for me, that's when I flip to, there is a specific page in the case of the Wendigo that I love to flip to show off to people. You've heard me pitch it enough times because we've shared a table together. I kind of wish that I had it prepared now that I think about it, but I didn't think to do that. I do have the book in question though. Let me grab that.
While you're doing that, the part of the thing with the fire sale sign also, and I do need to emphasize this because I've seen other tablers like try to copy it sometimes, which honestly, I love it every time I see that. But I've seen a couple use it as if they're basically trying to like beg for people to buy stuff. That's not what you'd want to do ever. No. It's never worth it. You don't want people buying stuff because of pity. You want them buying it because they're interested in it or they had a good time with you. Like those are the reasons you want to do it. The fire sale sign for me is a gag, and it catches people's attention. And when you get down to it, one of the big tricks whenever you're selling anything, like the numbers get changed a little bit every time, but there's this old statistic that like of all the people walking through, about 10 might look at your table, and then 10 of those people might buy something. Yeah. And if you can get any of those numbers up, you get more sales. Yeah, I've also seen it used with 100, but
I've heard those kind of numbers floating around because my sales training was drawing caricatures at Cedar Point. You want to talk about trying to hustle butts into seats. You try to convince somebody who's trying to book it to Top Thrill Dragster to park their butt for 5 minutes so you can draw them in a stupid face.
Yeah.
Like, that's a sales pitch. Like, sure, there are people who walk up to your booth and they're like, hey, I want to be drawn funny. But more often than not, you are looking at people as they're passing by being like, hey, I like your face. Let me draw you. Kind of things.
Yeah. And One of the advantages also of the sign is I don't have to actively do anything in order to get people to get that interaction. Like Kelci's very good at pulling people in. Like you have this ability to, like my favorite thing is how to compliment people to the table. Like you're really good at that. You're like, I love your blouse.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I picked up working at Cedar Point was one of the best ways to get people to stop is to compliment them on something. And this also ties into this was actually a pro tip that I heard in a different podcast. And when I heard it, I was like, yep, that's how you do it. The pro tip was the fastest way to get people to stop at your table is to get them to talk about themselves. So like you look at somebody and you're like, hey, I really like your shirt. Where'd you get it? They will start talking to you. Or, oh my gosh, that cosplay is really, really cool. And then you can start talking about the thing that they're cosplaying as. Or, stuff like that. That's like one of the easiest ways to get people to stop at your table and talk to you is to just throw out compliments. But they have to be genuine. Please throw out genuine compliments. Like, yeah, there was somebody, I'm not going to name names, but there was somebody who heard me do this and then they tried doing it and they were not good at it because they were getting tongue-tied and they were trying to throw out any compliment that would try to like fish people and bring them closer. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Make sure that it's genuine. Like if there's like a really cool shirt that somebody is wearing and you like it, throw that out there. If they don't hear you, that's okay. Let them keep walking.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll circle back around later. Sometimes they don't, and that's okay.
It takes a lot of practice to be able to get this kind of thing to the right balance. Because one of the other tricks is if people are looking for an interaction with you, if that's one of the things that you're trying to get them, you want to be careful that you don't immediately give them that interaction. Like the classic example is I would often be like, I love your cosplay. Can I get a photo of you? As soon as you've gotten that photo, that's the interaction. They're done. So if you're able to do like Kelci's describing and like get them in and be actually engaged with you directly and it can get ongoing, that can lead to that. It can also lead to being a table barnacle, but honestly, that hasn't been happening as much anymore. Am I right? Like,
there's not been too many. To clarify for people who have no idea what this is, a table barnacle is somebody who will stop at your table and then they will keep talking to you well past a point in time that is actually comfortable.
Yeah. And the trickiest thing about it is they're usually standing right in front of the table, blocking anyone else who might want to come up to the table. If you are ever worried that you are a table barnacle, a couple ways you can avoid that is don't hog the table. Like don't outstay your welcome, basically. Stay at one corner of the table while you're having the conversation. So you're out of the way of the main part of it. And if you're going to be there a long time, buy something.
Buy something, pick up a freebie, something. Justify the reason that you're there.
The tabler is going to be completely nice and friendly and conversational with you and won't want to tell you to go away because they think you might buy something before you go.
It's that customer service mode.
And I actually remember at one show, I did have a decently long conversation with somebody. They were cool. They were there for a few minutes. They bought something and left, but they bought one of my copies of Cospain that had a comic explaining what a table barnacle was. And they came back to me and were like, the next day, and we're like, I read your comic. I'm so sorry if I was a table barnacle. I'm like, oh, no. You're not. You bought something.
Yeah. Oh, that's
very
awkward.
Cute. Like they were genuinely afraid that they'd been rude, and they're like, no, you were good. You were what you did exactly what you're supposed to do. You came up. We had a good time. You bought something.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of like showing off pages, this is the page that I love to show off the most. Is this one here, mostly because of the sound effects, like punch, wumpita, roller, play. Like, I love reading that out loud for folks. I love sharing this with folks. There's another page in The Legend of Jamie Roberts that I also love to show off, and that's when the gang sees a giraffe for the first time. Because that entire character interaction is not only like, I think it's funny, but it's also like indicative of their characters. So when it comes to like promoting comics, if you get a table at a convention and you want to show off your comic, show off your favorite page, even if it's a spoiler. Show off your favorite page and be like, oh my gosh, I love showing this off, and have that kind of energy of like a toddler showing off something on the fridge, being like, I drew that.
And I will say that is an incredibly hard thing to learn how to do also, because a lot of us are introverts and don't want to be like, my work is good, you should look at it. Like, that's hard to learn how to do, and override the voice in your head that's like, your work is crap and I'm crap.
Well, here's where I'm going to rail against art school for a minute, because art school really hones that critic voice in your head. And the thing is, whenever you're doing sales or showing off your art, you have to turn that critic voice off.
Yeah.
Now, this could be because I've also had a little bit of improv training, because I used to do improv performance for like 2 years when I was in college. When you're doing improv, you also have that critic voice, and you also have to learn to turn that off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are exercises that you can do to help turn off that voice, but it is very important that when you're if you're going to show off your work at a convention, turn that voice off. The critic is not here to show off your work.
Yeah. The
critic is only there to break down your work during the editing process. Showing off your work is when your toddler side should come out to be like, look at this thing that I drew. I'm so excited to share this thing. Now, admittedly, I am very good at having that kind of energy for my own work. I'm not necessarily good at promoting other people's work.
Yeah.
Ben, if there's any one thing that I have noticed about you, it is that you are really good at promoting other people's work.
Yeah, I have the exact opposite problem. Because it's so much easier to be like, check out this cool stuff other people did. And like, none of the self-consciousness kicks in there. I love, by the way, you're referring to it as the toddler voice. Yeah. Because the more I think about it, that is your sales tactic. And that's really funny to me. I never heard that before.
I am an overeager toddler showing off my work.
But yeah, like that is a great way to approach it. And I absolutely find it easy. It's one reason I love anthologies. Because one of the great things about anthologies is I can show how cool other people's stuff is. Like, one of the things that happens with Less Than Secret is I get to rave about your Mothman story.
Thank you. I love my Mothman story.
I know, but it's always fun because I realized, oh yeah, that was a smart decision because we live in a place where people like Mothman. But yeah, I can pitch that. I can show elements like any of the books. I could turn to like, this is a great story. You should check it out.
Now, Less Than Secret is kind of an exception to the whole, like, where I mentioned that I like to talk about my stuff like a toddler. Like, with Less Than Secret, of course, I'm going to mention that I did a short story about the Mothman. I mean, who wouldn't? But, you know, there are other short stories in there, that I'm like, oh my gosh, you should also read the story about the Fresno Nightcrawler and the Jersey Devil. Those two are two of my favorites. And there's also a story about the Chupacabra, and that one is really, really cool. And you should also read that. Like, again, over-enthusiastic toddler energy.
No, that's exactly what you need. And that is definitely, it's one of the things I've noticed that I tend to do when we table together is I tend to let you take point on a lot of the sales stuff. And then I end up going low energy, which is probably not a good idea. But
no, I appreciate that, because I was actually tabling at the Be Excellent Festival of Games, and my roommate was with me, and she is also very low energy. Like, if you've seen the TV show Wednesday, I feel like I'm the rainbow roommate and Alex is Wednesday.
Yeah.
And that vibe just kind of comes off, but it's a nice balance to have that so that I can be the over enthusiastic. Oh my gosh, look at this thing. Isn't it so cool? And then my roommate over here is like, oh yeah, that's a really cool cosplay. How did you put that together? And just super chill.
One of the other things I'll bring up, because we are talking about tabling and that kind of appearance stuff, is pace yourself. Like, that's one of the things that I had trouble with early on. Because like contrary to the fact, so I am an introvert, except I can talk endlessly. Like that's the one part of me that is not normal introvert. But okay. I definitely have the lose energy as you're dealing with people more and more stuff. And I used to have a big problem at shows, especially like before I started doing well at them at all, where like, you know, a lot of negative self-talk, nobody's stopping at my table, like nobody's been here in a while, yada, yada, yada. And you have to learn to kind of like relax, flow with it. When sales happen, they happen, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, if you need to get away from the table, do it.
Yes.
I remember a show where I literally just, I was getting really down on myself and I'm like, I think this is in my head. And so I went to the bathroom and sat in the stall for 5 minutes.
Sometimes you just need to do that, man.
And I came out and the rest of the show was great.
Yeah. Also, shout out to the autistic creators out there who are like, you know, having a borderline panic attack at the thought of doing an in-person appearance, like going to a convention or anything like that. Like, for one, check out the How to Promote Your Comics Online stream that we did. But for another, if you are able to, absolutely have a table buddy with you. Like, yeah, I cannot recommend having a table buddy enough, because I used to do solo shows. Like I used to go to shows by myself a lot. It's because in the last year, I actually sold my car. So now anytime that I have to go to a convention, I have to like go with a friend or figure out another way to get there. But it's more often than not going with friends. Cannot recommend it enough. Go with friends if you can. Absolutely find some like-minded comics creators, like whether they're in their area or if you've met with them on a Discord server, like the C3 Discord server. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Just a little self-plug there. Our little logo.
I was trying to remember, how do you do it? Is C3? Do I have it backwards? I have it backwards.
There we go. That's yes, that's our gang sign, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't done that for a little while, but yes. I don't know why this is suddenly so hard. Yes.
Table buddies are so much fun. It helps kill time too, and shows are slow. It's true. Yeah. And like one of the other things, I literally just went over to my cost paint ideas sheet and wrote this down because I realized I hadn't done a strip about it yet. Table banter is really nice and a good way to like entertain people, get stuff going. Like Kelci and I have a few things we just do back and forth a lot. But the fire sale sign's a classic one.
Yeah.
Where Kelci goes, he does this every show.
Every show. Yeah. Anytime somebody stops up or they see your sign, I'm like, he does this every show. I've given up on stopping him.
No, we started timing me. That was fun. But,
we started timing that at Awesome Con. We started running a timer to see how long you had your arms up to hold up the sign. And that was because an attendee dared us to. Yeah.
Just because our boss is telling us to show this. I do in fact have it with me. The new one that I've actually burned the top of.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I do not do a sign like that. No. But to get to that requires talking a little bit about pricing at a table, and that's like tabling best practices. And we're having an entirely separate live stream about that topic, about tabling best practices. So we're not going to get into that too much today. But I do not do signs like that. Yeah. I leave that to Ben. And there was actually that gentleman across from us at Awesome Con that also had signs.
Yes.
He did not have like fire sale signs, but he would have signs that's like that he would sit there in his chair. And I'm assuming that he had these signs pre-made because his voice wouldn't carry across the floor, which.
Yeah.
Look, I will acknowledge I am a very loud person. Like I had to develop a very loud voice trying to heckle people at Cedar Point to sit in my chair when Top Thrill Dragster is running by my head every 5 minutes. You have to learn to talk loud. Yeah. But you know, if you're one of those people that's like, oh, my voice isn't that loud, I'm afraid that I'm not going to get heard. Use a sign. Signs are totally allowed. because that guy that was across from us, he had a handful of different signs. Like he had one that was like, "Do you like mystery comics?" or something like that. Or I do remember there would be times when like somebody in cosplay would walk past and look at his table, and then just kind of walk away and keep walking, and he would flip over his sign, and the other side of the sign says, "Your cosplay looks awful." or something like that.
Yeah, he was sassy. I liked him a lot. Just to show, because Sydney just dropped this in our chat. Mm-hmm. But we do in fact have art of me doing this for real.
I'm so glad that she got pictures.
Proof there's something wrong with me.
Hey, it works though. It works.
But yeah, like you don't have to do the sign stuff or anything like that. A big part of it is you got to figure out what you can maintain when you're promoting your stuff. It's the same thing for me with social media. Like, people are like, what platform do you need to be on for social media? And my answer is always the one you have the bandwidth for. Like, because as important as it is to get your work out there, and social media it's a good idea to have that be a part of that, at least for now. You also don't want it to be the only, like, you don't want to do more than your brain can handle, because there's so much other important stuff you should be doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And for me, the fire sale sign takes no energy. Like, I basically just lock my arms, and one of the, like, you know what? I'll talk about some of the tricks of the trade. I know this drove Kelci crazy, but I'd be back there, and like periodically I'd be like, oh, my arms are getting tired. I'm going to do just one arm for a bit and let one arm rest.
Yeah. Your sign says arms, plural.
Yes. But technically my arms, plural, aren't tired because one of them's still up. But yeah, like, I can just, and actually with this new sign, it's a lot easier. I can literally just lock it in place and just not worry about it till I make a sale.
Yeah.
No issue. Yeah. And like, that works well for me because there's a lot of time to be killed. And other times, like, I'll take, if I'm not doing the sign, because I'm not holding that up all the time, doing it periodically. Although it's very funny if, like, I do a fire sale, then 3 hours later I do another fire sale, and someone walks by and they're like, "You're still doing it?" And they think I've just done it the whole time. It's wonderful. But other times, like, I'll just sit down and I'll start drawing. And I'll do like, and, you know, I'll just kind of just be behind the table, sketching something, kind of taking a small mental break. I'll help anybody who needs help. But funny thing is, that'll also bring people to the table, because they'll be like, what is he doing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My roommate at Be Excellent was actually working on a commission while we were sharing a table. And there were people who were coming up and being like, "Ooh, what you working on?" And it was also, back when I worked at Cedar Point, it was one of the marketing tactics that we were taught, is to do a concept called demos, where we would just ask somebody to sit in a chair for free, no expectation of them buying. Just, "Hey, could you sit down for me for like 5 minutes? I'd like to take a minute to draw you. You don't have to buy." And sometimes they would be like, "Yes, I need to sit down," because Cedar Point's a big enough park that there's not like too many benches. They can take a minute to sit down, and then I can draw them. And for a demo, I draw them and I keep the drawing when it's done. And I can have that left up on my easel so that people can see, oh, this is how me, Kelci, would draw you as a caricature. And sometimes just the act of having somebody sit in chair for me while I draw them, like, it was a very regular occurrence to have people just kind of like come up and linger over your shoulder and watch you draw. And you have to get over that fear of, oh gosh, what if somebody is watching me draw? You have to get over that real fast when you're doing caricatures at Cedar Point, because that's like half the point, is to get people to watch you draw. So if you're like at a convention and you're like, how can I get people to come over and check out my stuff? I have seen people set up like a little portable screen to show off what it is that they're drawing on their tablet. I've also, more often than not, seen people just bring their traditional art setups. Like, there was that one gentleman at AwesomeCon that was our table neighbor who had like his he had like an 11 by 17 paper pad and some markers, and he was just drawing while his table assistants were talking to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
one of the things where a table assistant's really helpful, though.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, especially if you have someone who is there specifically for your table. Like, when we split a table, usually it's mostly like, I'm taking care of my half, you're taking care of your half. You don't have quite as much of the same flexibility because obviously your table partner has to be selling their stuff. Like, that's how it works. But other times, like, I've tabled with someone who is basically there, like, I don't have my own stuff, I'm helping you sell your stuff. And in that situation, you can really take it a lot easier and like do this kind of stuff way better. You know, it's funny. One of the other things that I'm kind of thinking about now, because I haven't done a lot of drawing at the table as much to pull people in, I used to do watercolor at the table. And that got a lot of people's attention because they loved watercolor.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you doing that a couple of times when we tabled together. I'm surprised that you don't do it more.
I stopped bringing my watercolor kit. That's the only reason. Like, I probably should pull it all out and do it again. The other thing is my current setup kind of blocked. Like, where I'm drawing, you can't really see now that I think about it because I have a lot of books that are up, and maybe I need to rethink that.
Yeah, but
we could do an entire thing also on table layout, but like that's another.
Yeah, that's a whole other stream.
Yeah.
Just to reiterate, because we're at like a quarter till the hour. So yeah, we've talked about going to conventions to sell your work. But also, just to reiterate from the top of the stream, pitch panel ideas to comic conventions. Even if you don't get in as like a tabler to show off your work, you can pitch a panel and see if they would be able to pick up a panel about a topic of your choosing, or if you can like join in on a panel on a given discussion. That is absolutely allowed. Run workshops, comics making workshops, how to write mysteries workshops, any of that sort of thing. Like, I cannot recommend workshops enough. That was like one of the best ways that I got to like spread the word about my work, was doing workshops for like the Girl Scouts, for Free Graphic Novel Day, for Free Comic Book Day. If that actually reminds me, I should probably pitch something for Board Game Demo Day is coming up in September. Might see about maybe pitching something that's pertaining to board games, like art for board games or anything like that. If miniatures are something that you're interested in, like miniature painting, like that's absolutely allowed. So yeah, running workshops, cannot recommend it enough. Going to a bookstore and doing a talk about a new book that you've released, or talking about the particular topic that your book is about. That sort of thing. Also highly recommend that. Particularly with the independent bookstores. Like, indie bookstores love bringing in local authors and independent authors. I actually did when The Case of the Wendigo was first out, I set up a table at the Book Loft, and it was some of the best sales of that book that I had in one day. It was great.
That's good to know. Like,
you have to reach out to the owner of the Book Loft and see if they would be willing and able, because they've had authors before.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. I think I was getting to the wrong person. But I like, that is one of the things I'm navigating right now, actually. I'm in talks with one of the local comic shops to do an appearance soon. I actually wanted to. So my anthology group, Canon Wright Productions, just had a major meeting about when our next project's coming up. Keep an eye out. We're hoping to do the announcement soon. But one of the things the only reason I haven't tabled this place yet or done an appearance at this comic shop yet is I wanted to see when that was happening, because I might try to shoot to do it during when we start promoting that project heavily. But one of the things that's nice about the independent places, especially if you find the right person to talk to, you're not going through a system. You're not going through like a queue. You can just say, hey, is there a day when I can come and set up a table and we can, sell some comics? And very often they'll do it. A lot of times it's free, or they'll just want like a couple copies of your book to sell, which why not?
Also, a good practice. I picked this up from, I think it was Danielle Corsetto that pitched this idea. And then I was like, I like it. I'm stealing it. If you set up at an independent bookstore or at a comic shop, have something at your table that you're like, hey, customer, did you buy something from the store that is hosting me today? If you buy something and you show me the receipt, I will give you a free thing. And in the past, I've done that for like mini comics and mini prints. It could also be a good way to like get stickers out. So highly recommend having some kind of a freebie to give to folks to encourage them to buy something from the host store who is hosting you. Because that's just, it's also a good way to encourage more sales for the person who is hosting you.
One other thing I'll throw out there, because it's good practice with a lot of this stuff. Every single piece of physical media you create, put some way that they can find your work on there.
Yes.
Put something to your website or your social media, or even a QR code that will take them directly to it. And also, even if it's fan art or something like that, put the copyright symbol, the year, and sign it.
Yep.
Every single thing you do.
Yep.
That's a part of promotion. It's also part of, cover your ass.
Yes.
But one of the other things that I'll also throw out, buffering. Crap, I had another point.
This is my weight dance.
Yeah. But yeah, like everything you sell in some way is promoting your work and is getting the word out there about your work. Oh, I know what the thing is.
Yes.
Just because people will remember that you did this and will be happy that they have a copy of the book they got from the artist that has this. Every time someone buys one of your things, offer to sign it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think anyone's going to say no. I haven't had it happen yet.
I haven't had it happen yet either. More often than not, somebody will be like, oh, this will be worth millions one day.
I was like, hopefully.
Yeah. You never
eBay,
know.
That's a common name.
Yeah. You never know.
Yeah.
Like, offer to sign it.
Yeah, it's such an easy thing to do. One of the things I like to do with the anthologies in particular, because they have multiple creators in them, I go back to the back page, which has bios for everybody. And I sign next to my bio and say, got to catch them all. Like, find all the rest of them.
Yep.
Which hopefully promotes everybody in that book. But yeah, and often if I know one of the other people who worked on it is at the con, I'll say, look for this person. They'll sign it. And now I've sent a buddy of mine, a potential customer.
Yeah. Heck yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, that hits pretty much all the points that I wanted to get across. Are there any last thoughts that you have? Final thoughts that you want to share?
Well, one thing I will do, tying into what you said about giving someone something free if they if they buy something from the store, that actually does tie into something very important I want to bring up.
Okay.
Be very careful with giving out free stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
The tricky thing with free stuff, even a business card or something like that, one of the tricks I learned a while back is you don't want your business card out in front of the table. You want them to have to ask for a business card and for you to give it to them. Because if someone can just take something free from your table, they are done with that interaction. They've had your interaction. They don't want to do anything else with you. So I always keep my business cards behind. If someone asks for it, yeah, they can have one then.
Okay.
But if you have too much stuff that you're giving out free, then the tricky thing is someone will be like, oh, I got something from this person. I don't need to buy something. So it can be good promotional if you're careful with it, but just be aware. Don't get too crazy with it. Like, I made free comics for Free Comic Book Day, and it was a fun promotion, and I don't know if it led to any sales.
Yeah. I was about to say, reserve the free things for like special occasions, or when you're doing like, if somebody is hosting you and they're a store and you want to help boost the sales of that store, then offer something for free. If it's Free Comic Book Day, offer a mini comic of some sort. My general rule of thumb is that if it cost me less than $3 per thing to make, I can offer it for free, no problem.
Yeah.
But that's my general rule of thumb. Anything that is like over $3, I'm like, I can't offer this for free. But that's like a cost thing. And that's a different topic entirely about like figuring pricing, that stuff out.
Yeah, pricing your stuff, that's another stream. Yes. And honestly, that's an important stream. That's a tough one. Like, I've been doing this professionally full time for like 7 years now. No, 2016, 8 years now. And I still don't price stuff correctly. Because that's tough. But the main reason I just brought up free stuff is because a lot of promotional stuff people do is free. And you got to be careful with that, because when you're running it as a business, your free stuff should be leading to more money. Like, that should be the goal of it. And you just want to make sure that's what's happening.
Right. Exactly. I had a thought about the free thing, and then it escaped me. It'll come back if it comes back. The weight dance.
The weight dance. Is it all in the shoulders? Is that what you're doing? Like up and down?
For me, it's a lot of, I don't know if I can demonstrate this. Let me see if I can. Okay. It's a whole lot of like.
Okay. So you're just bouncing. Got it. Cool.
Yeah. I'm bouncing in place, and you can't see it, but my knees are bent in like a squat. So I'm like,
I think I've seen you do this specifically at cons also, which is great.
Yeah. This is my convention weight dance.
Yeah. there have definitely been many goofy dance parties and stuff like that at cons before.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember, this was the second show we ever did across from each other, Wrath-A-Con 2018.
Okay.
Where you were like right across from me, and you just kept doing like, I think you had a Wharf Stash thing.
I did. Somebody was passing around Wharf Stashes, and I had a Wharf Stash on a stick.
You had a fake mustache on a thing, and you just were like, making eye contact with everyone on the other side and be like, it was great.
Yep. And hey, that could also be a good way to like get people to stop and check out your stuff. Just fake mustaches.
There's all kinds of fun stuff you can do. I did magic tricks for a while. That was interesting.
There you go. Yeah. The free thing. Talking about free stuff. I used to offer free coloring book pages, particularly at events that were like all ages or had a lot of kids at them.
Yeah.
I did not necessarily offer crayons, but I did offer at least one coloring book page. And that helped, but it does help to have, like, if you're going to offer a coloring book page, put your website on the bottom of it or your social media handle or something.
Yeah. So
that people can find you. And if they want to share that coloring work, how it is that they can share that with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to have strong abs. Always branding, stupid.
Yes. I had not heard that before, but I
just made it up.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Because always be branding I've been doing for a while. I'm like, ababa? No, hold on. No, I can make this work.
Abs. Always branding.
Branding, stupid.
I like always branding, silly.
Okay, that's nicer.
Yeah.
We'll workshop it.
I like more kind self-talk, although there is a place for ominous positivity. Like, it gets better. There is no other choice.
Yeah.
Like, there is a place for ominous positivity. I like ominous positivity and just kindness. Like, the duality of me.
No, that makes sense. And you got to be promoting yourself. And that's one of the things that's tough about all this, because you never want to be vain.
Well, look, I'm going to own up and say, I accept my vanity. I accept that I have that energy of like, witness me. Because I accept that I am Albert from the Birdcage. Yeah. Like, that is me all the time.
Well, the other thing is, I wouldn't actually necessarily say what we're talking about is vanity, but to a lot of people, that's what it feels like. You're like, can't be promoting myself. I need to be humble. I need to be like all this stuff. And it's like, you could be honest. Like that, there's a difference, because your work is awesome, even if you have trouble seeing it sometimes.
Yeah. Like, well, the fact that you have a finished thing at your table at all is awesome, and you should own that.
One of the things I always like to say is that like yourself, like, you know how art works. You might look at it and you see everything wrong. To people who can't draw, you're a unicorn.
Yes.
Like, it is amazing that you can do this at all. And there's also the factor, there's a wear out factor, especially when you do something like a comic where you work on it for a very, very, very long time. The way I like to describe it is, imagine your favorite book of all time or your favorite comic of all time. Imagine you had to read it every day for a year. Like front to back, no matter how long it is.
Yep.
You will know, you might still like it. You might not like it after that. You will know every single thing that's wrong with it.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it is to draw a comic. Because it doesn't matter how good it is, you've had to go over all those parts multiple times.
Yep.
And so a lot of times when you look at something, you're like, this is not that good, or things like that. That is because you have all that baggage built in there, and you need to recognize that and ignore it when you're telling other people to check it out, because they're not going to read it that many times.
Yeah. Put that baggage under the table and make sure that it's out of sight of the customer. And
if they do read it that many times, it's because it's their favorite book.
Yes, exactly. The obligatory Dragon Ball Z mention. I have read that manga so many times, and yes, it is flawed. I don't care. I still enjoy it.
I actually, just fun example, I have an older comic that I'm working on doing reprints of right now. I'm actually trying to do a home print version of it. And I just printed a copy of it that still needs to be cut and stuff. This is one of my more popular selling mini comics. And I go back and I look at the art, and it's from 2015. So a long time ago. Yeah. And I cringe at some of the art.
Yeah.
But it's still one of my most popular stories. And even though I look at it and I go, I don't do it that way anymore for good reason. Yep. Other people look at it and go, this is cool. Let's get it.
Yeah.
I
had that realization when I was looking at my numbers, and I realized that Johnson and Sir, which is a book that I took out of print, I no longer have it at my table, but it is still in my top 5 best-selling books. It's right up there with The Case of the Wendigo and The Legend of Jamie Roberts volumes 1 and 2. I'm pretty sure Johnson and Sir is somewhere in the top 4 along with those other ones. And I'm like, really? I haven't had it at my table in 5 years. How did this happen? And it's also the oldest book that I have.
Is that actual book sales or profits?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of bonkers when I looked at the numbers. I was like, okay, interesting. I'm probably still not going to bring it into print because I only have a limited amount of table space, but that's a separate issue.
Oh, another promotion thing to throw out there. I know we're past the hour point, but one thing I did want to mention, because it's a good thing you can do at cons, especially if you come across people whose work you're interested in getting more involved with or anything like that. Trades.
Yes.
If you find we're all tight on money at cons because we're trying to make money. We're not trying to spend it.
Yeah.
But very often, especially at an event like the Small Press and Alternative Comic Expo, which is mostly a networking con more than anything else, I went around and did trades with a bunch of people, including a couple of people where I'm like, I want this person to work on anthologies with me. Yeah. So that is another type of promotion and networking you can do where you're getting your word out to other creators. And that doesn't always lead to a lot. There's a joke that there's the dollar amount changes, but there's a $20 bill that keeps getting passed around every con. Yeah. Because we keep spending it on everybody, on other people at the con. But there is also sometimes that can lead to business stuff. That can be, I know who this person is because I have this comic from them. There are a few people, I don't know that much about them, but I see them at a ton of cons, and it's I have your work now because we ought to know each other.
Yeah, we done did a trade. I do highly recommend trades. Also, I'm going to throw this out there. We've been talking about conventions a lot. I would also recommend looking at other in-person events if you're looking to do in-person events. Yeah. I keep having a friend of mine, bless him, he keeps throwing different art festivals at me, the Grand Rapids, Ohio Apple Butter Festival is open for applications, and I'm like, okay. But there are little there are art fests, like C3 is going to have a spot, I think, at the Columbus Oktoberfest.
I was about to bring that up because I did Oktoberfest once before with C3. This was in 2022, which was my best sales year period. And this was probably my number 2 event. It got topped. And honestly, I need to double check the numbers. Actual profits wise, I might have made more because it was way cheaper than my number 1 event.
Yeah.
But it was the general public, so you wouldn't necessarily expect it. We kind of switched gears because we realized one of the best ways to make money at that show was caricatures. So everyone in this group started doing caricatures of everybody, and we made bank. It was great, and got word out there about C3, which was a brand new organization at the time. And we're doing it again this year, and I'm very excited for it. We do still have spots, by the way. So if any C3 people see it, DM me. Please,
right here, and
I'm begging you because you guys should do it. It's really cool. I cannot recommend this event enough, and we have a lot of spaces. You will not be alone. We have room for 4 people at a time at this thing, so you will have friends with you.
So highly recommend doing the kind of events that you don't anticipate doing, like art fests, Oktoberfests, that sort of thing. Reach out to your independent bookstores. And I had another point, and it escaped me.
Libraries?
Like a good boomerang, it's going to come back to me. But yes, libraries is another one. It was in the vein of getting your work out there at different events. I mean, craft shows could also be another outlet. Local art markets, farmers markets might also be a good outlet to try. Just, if you're doing in-person promotions, consider branching out your offering so that it's like not just comics. Have a rotation of things that you can bring to different shows. Like, I'm going to a farmer's market. I better bring a lot of greeting cards and notebooks. I'm going to an art fest. I'm going to make sure that I have lots and lots of prints, that sort of thing.
One thing, a couple things I want to build on that with. One thing you might be thinking is, well, a lot of these events aren't the type of stuff I do. I do comics. I don't want to go to a farmer's market and be selling comics because that's not what people are there to buy. Here's the thing. There'll be a very good chance that nobody else there is selling comics. And that actually is a benefit. You become a big fish in a small pond. Because, I mean, this is actually why one of my favorite types of shows to do, and I actually, now that I think about it, haven't been able to do a lot lately, like just bad luck with stuff, with timing and things. But anime shows, anime cons are one of my favorites to do. And one of the things that's great about it is there are definitely some cartoonists there, but you don't usually have a lot of them. And as a result, people who are going around, because a lot of nerds go to anime cons, and you're going around and he's like, oh, an actual independent cartoonist. I want to check this stuff out. That's point one. So it's definitely good to check out other types of shows. The other thing to look for, especially since a lot of these shows are smaller, is they may be a lot cheaper. And that is an important thing to pay attention to when you're trying to do any of this budgeting. If you can go out to a show, it might be small. You might not have a lot of sales. But if you're out $20 for the space and it was in your hometown, so you didn't have to travel far or get a hotel, it's still absolutely worth it.
That's like Be Excellent Fest was still worth it for me. Cause while it was a 1-day show and I didn't make a whole ton there. I made just shy of 200. It was still worth it to me to go because it was in town. And I didn't have to pay that much for the table. At least compared to other shows.
I actually had a bad run recently because honestly, cons have been a little dicey.
They've been weird in 2024. And it's not just you.
No, it's starting in 2023 for me. I actually had a bad run where I had 4 shows in a row that ended in the red. I did not make money. I lost money on those shows. And then I did free comic book day. which was just an appearance at a comic shop.
Yep.
In Columbus. I didn't have to pay for the space.
Mm-hmm.
People were there to pick up free comics, and then we just had tables outside selling stuff. And I did better at that than I've done at a lot of cons.
Yep.
Even if I had to pay for the table or do crazy amounts of travel, it was still way more money than I've made at a number of shows.
Yeah.
And it's just, there are benefits to branching out and to checking these other types of shows out because like a lot of times they're lower pressure, lower risk, and you get your word out there and you get it out sometimes to people who didn't normally follow your stuff. Like, if you can get your work into the hands of the general public and they decide they like it, that's big.
Yeah. I remember the point that it had escaped me. Zine fests. I highly recommend going to zine fests, especially if you're in especially if your tastes are not so mainstream and you tend to lean more towards like punk aesthetics or the sorts of things that like you look at an independent bookstore and you're like, could be more radical. Yeah. Zine Fest, great environment for that sort of thing.
I do. Los is here and has advice. Volunteer too.
Yes. Highly recommend volunteering. Los would know a thing or two about volunteering for shows because I've seen him volunteer at a lot of different shows in the DC area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be staff volunteer at Techo in about a month, teaching dance to nerds. So please show up if you see that on their things. But yeah, with Zine Fests are definitely interesting. Absolutely recommend checking them out. I know personally, the main reason I don't do many Zine Fests is all of them are far enough away and I have enough trouble with making sales at them that I can't justify the travel expense. Yeah. If Zine Fest happened in Columbus, I would 100% be doing them.
Yeah. I mean, since I'm based in Toledo area, a lot of the Zine Fests that cross my radar are like in Chicago or Detroit. Detroit has Detroit Zine Fest, which I went there one year with a couple of C3 members. It was a fun time. I'm going to see if I can maybe get in again. We'll see. I'm actually considering taking a year off from doing conventions. The Los recommends start one. Start a convention, start a Zine Fest, something. I'm considering starting a Toledo Zine Fest because I think the vibes are just punk enough up here, and there's enough people who are like making indie things that I think it could work.
Yeah. If you got a minute after, let's talk about after the stream because I actually have an idea about that too.
Okay, sure.
But Zine Fests are definitely a thing to check out, especially like I know we're primarily an Ohio and Columbus based organization.
Yeah.
I can vouch for the fact that Zine Fests in New England are fantastic. And it's one of the things where it kind of threw me when I came to move to Columbus and I wasn't finding Zine Fest close to me. And a lot of Zine Fests in the state are only a few years old. Like they actually didn't exist when I first moved out here.
Yeah, like Street Cat Zine Fest is only a few years old at this point.
Yeah. But yeah, if you're in the New England area at all or anywhere on the northeast portion of the country, then there are a ton of Zine Fests everywhere. It's one of the things that threw me because I expected that out here.
Yeah. There's also a ton of Zine Fests on the West Coast. Because I think the website is keepitweird.art or something like that. They have an entire list of Zine Fests and they break it down by region. And there's a ton of them on the West Coast and the East Coast, and especially in the Northeast corridor. So are you confirming the address for me?
DIY resources for the working artist. Yep. I like their little icon. Their little icon is like a little alien dude.
Yep, it's that one. It's that website. Yep. And that's keepitweird.art.
Oh, I think I need to read some of this. They have a thing.
It's a good resource.
Yeah. They have one of the first things they show is an article called Pricing Your Art, and the icon is the little Monopoly man. That makes me happy.
So there you go. Highly recommend that resource.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've covered so many bases. And I've shared my final thoughts. So any final
I think
final
that covers
thoughts?
it.
Cool.
Yeah, if you have more questions, and one of the things I'd absolutely recommend is checking out the Columbus Cartoon Coalition. We are a group of over, I think we're at 200 now, aren't we?
Roundabout there.
I think we're at over 200 cartoonists based in the Central Ohio area. And we regularly are talking about all this stuff and talking about new opportunities and getting table spaces and things like that. So if you're interested in that, best way to find it are either at the Ko-Fi link that is directly below, or you can go to Instagram c3.ohio. But yeah, and we are both members of the executive board. We're both, big supporters of it ever since we joined 2 years ago, I think. And yeah, that's about it from us.
Yeah, that's my final thoughts. If you have any questions for us, feel free to leave them in the comments section below, especially if you're catching the replay of this. And be sure to check out Ben's and my work. Ben, where can we find your stuff?
I was about to say it. We forgot to do that part of the promotion. Cool. You can find my work at bwhcomics.com. I'm also at bwhcomics on Patreon, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. I do game streams every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/bwhcomics. And we also sometimes do periodic live streams of just drawing art and hanging out. So highly recommend checking that out. You can also find my Discord server. I actually don't realize I don't have a link for it in this chat.
That's okay.
But if you happen to go to my Twitch profile and look under there, you can find a link that'll get you into my Discord server. You can also find my webcomic Cospain, a webcomic about cosplay and convention craziness, over at cospaigncomic.com.
Heck yeah. So everything that I do online can be found at kelcidcrawford.com. That is KELCID as in dog, Crawford. That has links to all of my webcomics, all of my YouTube videos, and all of my Ko-fi shout outs and everything else. I do have a Ko-fi page that is ko-fi.com/KelciDCrawford. I am also on YouTube at Kelci D Comics. You cannot find me on Instagram. I nuked my Instagram account. That's a whole separate story. And I do have an email newsletter. You can sign up for that on my website or by heading to my webcomic, The Legend of Jamie Roberts, which is about a genderqueer pirate and their two best friends treasure hunting in a land full of dragons and why that's a bad idea. And you can check that out at thelegendofjamieroberts.com.
All right. So, I think that covers everything. Time for the final sign off?
Just about. Don't forget to check out the Columbus Cartoon Coalition and do all the YouTube stuff. Subscribe and leave a comment. Hit the notification if that floats your boat. I'm not here to sink it, but we do regular streams here on YouTube, so be sure to check that out. And we also have a Discord server where Central Ohio cartoonists can get together and share their art and resources and everything else. Information should be down in the description or on our Instagram page. I don't recall the Instagram link off the top of my head.
Instagram.com/c3.ohio.
Thank you. Yes, now it's time for the final sign-offs.
Gotcha. And just to throw it out there, next week at this same bat time, same bat channel, we will be doing a book club discussion of On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yep. All right. Well, that pretty much covers it for us. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, rock on, guys, and never stop drawing.
Thank you so much for watching, y'all. You are awesome.